Hey,
Hi,
how's it going?
it's going really well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I couldn't be happier to have you. So for those of y'all who don't know, if you didn't see the thumbnail, you just decided, you know what did life cook up this time? We have an amazing interview with the one, the only, Cartethiya from Wuthering Waves voice actor. I cannot wait for her to introduce herself. We have Amanda Rischel.
That's me.
That's
And you
it.
actually said my name right. A lot of people, they're confused about my surname. It's like, what is that again? And I always say it's like Michelle, but with an R. So nailed it.
Mm.
Rochelle, you got it.
I give credit to my mother. She was an English teacher, is an English teacher, and pronunciation was a big thing from her. So
Oh, I
awesome.
appreciate it.
But yeah, I think the first thing that I would just say is amazing performance as Cartethiya and Fleur de Lis. Actually, I should have said that at the beginning. I think one of the things that me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people were, originally I didn't immediately pick up that it was the same person,
Yeah,
which
yeah. I
is
saw a lot of people speculating, is it the same voice actor or are they two different ones? Which is interesting because uh, you could have said, we're going to try and obviously make these be the same voice actor. You know, you could have made the voices really similar. But, you know, there was a choice here. Let's make the characters very dissimilar, including in the voice. But I'm flattered that people thought it was two different voice actors. I'll take that.
you should be, because like I was honestly like by the time it was all over, I was like, wow, like this is extremely impressive. Like I didn't, like I said, I didn't think it was the same person originally, and the fact that you were able to, just display that much range, to do both of those characters, I was, yeah, like I said, me personally, you have a fan of me.
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that.
Where can people find you, social wise?
Well, you can try and find me on social media. I should be on most of the platforms, and I will be called Amanda Rochelle on all of them. So if you can spell my surname, you'll be able to find me. Good luck. I'm sorry
And
about
it'll be in
that.
the description as well,
Yeah,
everybody.
but I'll be there, and yeah, I'll keep you all posted when I'm allowed to talk about new exciting things as they come. But if nothing else, I'll just keep lurking and enjoying all your fan art and all the other beautiful things that come my way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of y'all who, like I said, if maybe this is your first time on the channel, my name is Life. This is Life Lessons Gaming, where we like to talk about story, lore, and community discussions for various games that we play. One of the games that I am obviously very passionate about is Wuthering Waves, and that's why we are here today. So I think I'd like to kind of first start off with just kind of more of a general question to let people know a little bit more about you. How did you get started with voice acting?
That's a really good first question. I'm actually glad you asked that because the short answer is it was not a straight path. And I think that's really good to say because I think often we don't hear about performers until they have a certain degree of success. And it can seem like people just come out of nowhere. We're all overnight successes. Nobody had to really struggle. And I think for the majority of us, it is quite a long path. You know, even if we know from an early age that we want to do something, especially something, in creative arts performance, it's not usually there's just this set path that you can follow and you are guaranteed a certain result. So for me personally, I knew that I wanted to be an actor really early on, but I didn't necessarily know how I was going to do it or where I was going to end up. I loved storytelling. That's what I knew. I loved, reading stories, watching stories, making them up, drawing, acting, all of it. I really just wanted to be part of creating these worlds that other people could get lost in because I thought that was something that was really spectacular to me. And I was very interested in performance, but I grew up in Denmark. I'm half Danish. I grew up in Denmark, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do acting as a young child. So for me, what happened was I started in theatre, which is where a lot of us start, because that's just what's most accessible. Almost every school has some kind of school play. There are, opportunities for teenagers to do some kind of drama, amateur dramatics. But I think all of that helps you build a really good foundation in acting. and it helps you build your confidence as a performer, which will all be really helpful when you then ultimately end up in something like voiceover, because voice acting to me is acting. It's not separate to acting, it's a subset, a genre of acting. And everything that I did before, whether it was theater where I started out, or screen acting, which I eventually moved to, motion capture, which was something I trained in later, and then ultimately voiceover. I've sort of gone through all of the different genres and worked in all of them. And I feel that all of that, the different styles of acting, have helped me tremendously in voiceover, which was the last one I pursued, not because I wasn't interested, but just because there wasn't a lot of opportunity. When I was still in Denmark, I did a bit of dubbing for animation. That was my first entry into voiceover, because we don't have a lot of original production, not a lot of animation studios or games development studios, certainly not at that time. So dubbing for animation was my first entry into voiceover, and I'm glad in a way that that was how I started, because as I'm sure a lot of people know, there's quite a technical difference to dubbing versus being the original voice actor for something.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So if you are the original voiceover performer, you have more freedom typically and range, both in terms of what the character sounds like. Maybe there's a brief from the developer, but you have a certain freedom of how am I going to play this character. And maybe the animation hasn't really been done yet, so there's also a lot of flexibility in terms of the timing of each line. Whereas if you are dubbing in animation or games that have animated sequences or cinematics, they will already have been timed to the original language. So if you are then coming in and doing it in a different language, you are restricted by the time constraints of the original language. So you can't take longer to say a line than it was in the original.
Sense, yeah.
The animation won't match, it will have, the scene will have moved on, right? And that just means it's more technical to perform, because you're still trying to play the character. You are still trying to make it truthful and real and interesting. You're trying to sound like the character should sound. But you are also having to keep all these constraints in terms of timing. You have to stick to all of that.
Yeah.
And you have the challenge of maybe you're hearing the original language, but you are now performing in another language, and you have to also account for the differences in tonality, pitch, pacing, rhythm of the language you are dubbing in versus the original language. So it's a lot more complex because there's just more stuff going on.
I never thought about that before.
No, of course, and why would you necessarily if that's not something you do? But I think starting there has helped me, because it just means I've sort of learned the hardest bit first. And so now, by comparison, if I am dubbing now, I'm sort of familiar with it, and if I'm performing original lines, I have more freedom to play. So I'm actually glad that I came at it from sort of a long way that took me through all sorts of other acting disciplines. But all of it, I think, added up to just a good toolkit that I can use for different things. Even things like the difference in stage acting to screen acting, I think still helps as a voiceover performer, because certain games are very cinematic, very grounded, very realistic. They are becoming more like the big films you would have seen in cinemas.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they're looking for a performance that is more like what you would have expected from that. So everything is supposed to sound really believable, really realistic, even if it's set in a fantasy or a sci-fi setting. Whereas other games have a more heightened style. They're more like animation. And so a bigger or more theatrical performance is maybe appropriate for that project. Mm-hmm. And so I just think having that basic understanding of different styles of performance helps you adjust your delivery to a certain project. So I feel very lucky that I didn't just, walk down the street and someone grabbed me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a voice actor?" I'm kind of happy that I had to go through all of that, because I feel like that made me more confident in my ability and less scared now that if I'm in the booth and someone asks me something like, "Oh, what if this character was Russian?" Or, "Could you be 50 years older?" Or, something like that. I'm not as afraid to just give it a try and say, "Okay, let's see what happens."
Yeah, I mean, you're a lot more well-rounded as well, I'm sure.
I just think the takeaway of it really is it's all acting. And so even if you are someone who's already a performer in a different style of acting, mm-hmm. those skills are still transferable to voice acting. And if you're completely new to it, you don't necessarily have to feel like if there's no voice acting opportunities where you are, or no training available, doing other kinds of acting will still help you. That's also, it is all acting, and it will help you be a good performer. And then the technical aspects of voice acting is something you can add on to that, but the baseline is good performance technique. So yeah, that was a long answer, but I think it's important to be transparent about, for most people, it isn't just a straight, it took me 2 years.
Yeah.
There's years and years of just trying things and practicing and looking for a way in. So I just wanted to say that as an encouragement. If anyone out there is listening who is a performer or wanting to be a performer and they feel a bit stuck and unsure how they're going to get there, you will get there. Don't feel like anything you're doing is a waste of time. It isn't. It will all help you.
No, that was a great answer. Honestly, I was thinking the exact same thing. Like as you were answering, I'm just thinking to myself, like, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who could benefit, because I come from a small town myself. I don't know exactly how small the town in Denmark that you spoke of was, but coming from a small town like the one that I came from, it very much is like, you don't have a lot of access to certain opportunities. Like, maybe you wanted to be an artist, right? Or maybe specifically you want to be like an animator, for example. But the place around you, there's no animation school. All they have is just like, traditional art. Yeah. And so there's the idea of like, well, you're still getting experience either way, you're still learning. You get some information about art history, different things like that, just kind of like what, general style courses and things of that nature that will inevitably lead you to that final result. And like you said, for me, just you sound like a very well-rounded individual at this point who, like you said, you're able to do the more cinematic things. Like, to be honest, I would consider your work with Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis cinematic, personally. Like, it sounded just like, it did not sound the same degree of like whimsical, I guess you could say, or just like as I could think of for like some other types of games and animations and things of that nature. It really sounded like, yeah, like you said, like kind of like a movie. And that's how Wuthering Waves, at least for me, in the way that they present it, it feels like they were going, I think even the developers might have said that at one point, that they were going for a more cinematic approach to storytelling. So my next question to you, you told us, a bit about your start and, that journey in fact, it was a journey. It was not just like a, take a left here and, there's voice acting. Yeah, for sure. For some people, perhaps it will be. But like you said, if that's not your path, that doesn't mean that you won't get there. And sometimes, it's about the journey, not the destination. Exactly. What inspired you? Like maybe there may be things you saw, like what made you say, this is what I want to do? Was it Bugs Bunny or something? I don't know. Like, was it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, like I said, I was always just really interested in storytelling, good stories, and interesting environments, and just worlds that were different to ours, where magic existed, or the different creatures existed, or anything that was just different, like a parallel to our world, but something else. I was just always very intrigued by, and I knew I wanted to be part of it. And I think the reason I was drawn to acting ultimately was because I thought, well, that is embodying this thing that doesn't exist in our world. It's making it real. Playing a character who isn't here, but making it real for people to see and understand and go on a journey with. And I thought, that's so exciting, being able to do that and bring that character to life. And I really wanted to do that. And I think part of what inspired me, I was actually drawn to video games very early on, like from the 90s even. Obviously, games back then were quite different. Yeah. I don't think we'd call them cinematic at that point, but I think what games have always had, even if you go way back, is that they are immersive in a way that it's hard to do with other mediums. You can write a brilliant story, you can have a brilliant film, a brilliant play, but I think most of the time we will always, as the viewer, be aware of that distance between us and the story. We will be aware that we are sat, in our sofas at home watching Netflix, or, you know, there is that separation. The story's engaging, but we don't feel like we're necessarily in it. Whereas with games, because of that dependency on player input, even if it's a very simple game that isn't necessarily philosophical or poses great moral dilemmas, you are still the person in charge. You have to press that button or click that mouse to make something happen. And I think it just makes the player, the person consuming the entertainment, think more about, what do I want to happen? What could happen? What should I do? What will the consequences be? And I think that is really interesting.
To burn this village or to not burn this village, to take this car or to not, to wreck this economy or to not.
You have great freedom and great responsibility, and I think that's very, very interesting. So games was something I always wanted to work in. Any particular things that inspired me? Planescape Torment is my favorite game of all time. That betrays my age. Look
Say
it
that
up,
one
guys.
more time. What is it called?
Planescape Torment. It's a game from '99.
Okay.
Google it. It's a brilliant game. It's often on lists, even now, you know, like top 10 best narrative games of all time. It really is, I think. And if any game deserves a remake or remaster, that's the one. It has beautiful writing. It is very philosophical, very existentialist. If you're aware of more recent games like Disco Elysium, that's kind of a spiritual successor. It's in the same vein. But it is a game that is very much about exploring who you are, or who the player character is, and making choices about who you want to be going forward. So that game has brilliant voice actors in it, even though it's an old game and it's not fully voiced. It had some brilliant people in it, like Jennifer Hale, who we all know and love, doing a British accent, because I guess there weren't a lot of British voice actors back then, or maybe she's just so good that, you know, she can do it all, can't she? Rob Paulson. It had a lot of like the great voice actors in video games even then, and I was so impressed by them, and I thought, you know what, this is fantastic. I want to make someone else feel as immersed in something as these voice actors have made me feel immersed in this story. So, and Jennifer Hale is still one of my, you know, great inspirations. I mean, I think any voice actor should look up to her. She's the most prolific female voice actor of all time.
Yeah, that name is actually extremely familiar.
Very, very impressive. Very good performer. But no, there are so many people. Alex Wilton Regan is another fabulous voice actor who I really admire and look up to, and I think her delivery is great, and she's also just a really nice person by the looks of it. So yeah, I think Planescape was a really early inspiration for me in terms of video games specifically, and that made me go like, oh, this is what I want to do specifically. I want to work on video games because they make me feel a way that no other form of entertainment does.
No, I totally understand that. I think one of the things that you touched on which was really interesting, and people should really pay attention to this. People don't really realize how integral voice acting is. So for myself, I'm a musician. Play alto sax, tenor sax, dabble on piano. I'm actually going to try to get back on piano this summer. And even when it comes to music, like, you never realize how important these things are until you experience bad music or bad voice acting. And it just makes you appreciate good music and good voice acting so much more. And the role that a really good, and I'm not trying to gas you up here, but it's just like, honestly, your performance on Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis were really good. And it really kind of, I'm going to be honest. I think there's this thing, and maybe you've experienced this in your time. And also, if you could answer this question briefly, have you done other language? Do you do any other languages?
Yeah, so I speak Danish as well.
Okay. Have you voiced or dubbed in Danish as well?
So when I was doing dubbing back in Denmark, that was from English to Danish.
Oh, okay.
So I worked that way, which was interesting. But yes, it means I still do. It's rare that I'm asked to do lines in Danish or Scandinavian languages, but often you get this hybrid where it's in English, but the character has that accent. But every now and then, maybe for flavor, they'll be like, oh, can you like just curse in Danish or something? And you throw that in just to make it authentic.
Got it.
But yeah, every now and then.
Okay. Thank you for that. So yeah, like I said, when it comes to like I said, just good voice acting and how important it is, maybe you've experienced this, I don't know, but there's this thing within the anime as well as gaming sphere where there is a lot of concern, might be a nice way to say it, but basically like people have some stigmas against the English voice acting of certain games, because they're just like, oh, you know, the original voices sound better and I only play in this language or that language. I don't normally play, like, you know, it would be JP, CN, what have you, Korean. But one of the things that Wuthering Waves I think has done a really good job at, and it has been applauded for, has been the voice acting. Like a lot, I know when 2.0 originally came out, and you know, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, so forth, so on, people, I started seeing people saying, yeah, you know, I normally only play in Japanese or Chinese or Korean, and I heard such good things about the English voice acting that I decided to give it a shot, and it was actually worth it. And that is not said about everything. And so, like I said, there's just, have you heard that conversation around, whether it be anime or gaming, this idea of like, oh yeah, I only listen to this because of the negative stigmas?
I'm completely aware. I mean, this is just, I suppose, an extension of the old dub versus sub, you know, debate, right? And I think the beauty here is these are just options that are available to everyone. I think it's great to have things exist in multiple languages, because then you can play whichever one you prefer, whether you prefer a language that you speak yourself to make that more, you know, accessible to you, or whether there's just a language that you feel is more appropriate for the story because of the setting or the style, or there is just a language you prefer. I think it's brilliant that we all have that option to choose whatever we prefer. And I don't necessarily see those different versions as competing with each other, because it doesn't matter what anyone else is playing or what anyone else prefers. What matters is what you prefer. And so you just pick whatever feels good to you, whatever appeals to you, and just let people have the choice to do something else. I don't think it needs to, they're not in conflict the way I see it. Nobody's trying to, and I think certainly English dubs, I don't see it as us trying to replace something else, or compete with something else. I think it's just another alternative or another option for anyone who wants to play in a language that they can understand. And I guess English is just an easy language for an international dub, because the majority of people speak English or are confident. You know, they understand a lot of English. So I guess that's why it's become sort of the international default. But I wouldn't see that as necessarily replacing anything. I think it's just another option for anyone who says it makes the game more accessible to me, it makes it easier for me to follow it. But I think it's lovely if they're all of such high quality that people can have discussions, you know, about all of that. I mean, ideally, they should all just be valid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
I think one thing that maybe can also confuse this discussion sometimes is a misconception that I don't think all versions or localizations need to be identical. If you know what I mean.
Okay, that's interesting.
Is, of course, the game should still feel consistent. It shouldn't feel like you're playing a different game because you're playing a different language, and the characterizations should be consistent. But I think we also have to take into account that different languages sound different. There are different conventions in different languages for how we speak, the pace we speak in, the pitch we speak in. And I think certainly my experience from dubbing animation from English to Danish was that the languages are pitched differently. They sound very differently. So if I was trying to replicate a line read in Danish with the exact same tonality and pitch and sound of the original voice line, it would have sounded very off and jarring, and it wouldn't have sounded real to a Danish listener, because it would be following the wrong pattern. It would have a different musicality. And so sometimes I think these debates can come up because if you're used to listening to something in one language, then maybe a different language will sound stylistically unfamiliar to you. Often I see, you know, people saying, oh, in this language, all the voices are very bright. and young. In this language, they all sound comparatively older, more mature. And maybe you have a preference for one or the other, but I think those changes will probably just be due to the fact that the idea of what does a young person sound like might be different in one language to another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just based on, convention, norms of society, and how where that language is placed. So yeah, I think I'm aware of that debate, but it's not something I think too much about. I think people just play in whatever language they prefer, and if people choose to play in English, hopefully they're happy with the work they did, and I have no doubt it's fantastic in any language. So why not experiment? Try them all.
Yeah, me personally, so for anime, things of that nature, I normally watch it in Japanese. There are certain anime that I will, to this day, One Piece, I tell people to watch it in English, actually. I say watch One Piece in English up until like not Water 7. There's a particular arc, and everybody knows what I'm talking about who's watched One Piece. It's basically after, there's a character, her name is Robin, and Robin says a very particular thing, and it hits so different in English. To this day, I'm like, watch it in English until that part with Robin, then you can watch it in whatever other language you want. But the English voice actor absolutely demolished that line. Maybe I can show it to you later. But for games, however, me personally, I play every game in English. Just because of the fact there's so much going on. I want to understand, like, when there's anime, I can sit back passively, look at subtitles. But with games, like, there's so much happening. I want to hear the English voice lines, so I can also, when they're around open world and running around, picking things up, attacking, I want to understand everything that I'm hearing. So that's just my personal preference. Obviously, like we said, other people have their own. With that conversation, Wuthering Waves. The question that I have for you is, what interested you in Wuthering Waves?
Well, first of all, I didn't know that I was auditioning for Wuthering Waves when I did, because there's a lot of confidentiality about projects in general, but especially games. It's because, as I'm sure you're all aware, there is so much interest in games coming out, and everyone's really curious and impatient, and so there's a high risk that the more people you give information to, the greater the chance is that information ends up prematurely on the internet. So when we are auditioning, we usually don't know what the project is for. It will be codenamed. We will just be given enough information that we can glean the setting and the style of the project, and we have enough information about the character that we can make an educated guess as to what they should sound like. And so all I knew was that I was auditioning for a character that would have two aspects to them and two separate voices, which that intrigued me already, because that's exciting, isn't it? You get to do two characters and show very different sides. I thought that was exciting, and I thought, that would be such a great job, whoever gets it. So I actually didn't know that I was working on Wuthering Waves until a few months into it, probably. I think it was, at some point during recording for 2.2 that I realized what it was. But before, I think it was probably around Christmas or before 2.0 actually came out. And I remember, oh, wait, no, this is actually quite big. Oh, okay. And there was a moment of panic where I thought, no, what if everything I've done up until this point won't match the tone of the rest of the game? And I trusted that, everyone I'd worked with had given me all the information I needed, and they had. But that made me want to deep dive into Wuthering Waves and find out as much as I could about it, obviously. So at least going forward, I would have more knowledge. And I remember that one of the videos I found on YouTube was actually one of yours. And I think it was the one called the only lore video you'll ever need to see, or something like that. Oh,
yeah, my beginner's guide.
That really, that spoke to me, because I was pressed for time. So I was like, yes, this is the one. And it was actually just really interesting. Because that, if you haven't seen the video in question, that is about, going back to 1.0. Go and watch it, it's great. And it just gave me, obviously it's shortened down for time, neatly summarized, but it gave me a really good understanding of some of the lore concepts of the game, because there are a lot of lore concepts. You know, it's a really clever game in the sense that it's all based around sound and sound waves, and it has all these really interesting mechanics. But if that is just being, you know, told to you in a session, that's a lot of information to digest really quickly, because the player will have been playing for hours and they have a lot of time to get into, okay, what's a resonator? What does this mean? What does that mean? If that's all thrown at you at once, it's a bit much. You know,
Absolutely.
like, okay, I think I understand it, but do you actually? But that video was really helpful. And when 2.0 came out and I saw that trailer that I think we've all seen and love now, you know, with the song and everything, I was like, wait, the production value, the music. I had no expectation of, you know, what it would be like. And I just remember thinking, God, I'm so lucky to be part of this. And I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's just like, so, I just hear there's like some, you know, some little mobile game or something like that. You know, I'll do a couple lines, you know.
Well, in a way, I think it's good that you don't know when you're auditioning what it is for, because that means you don't get as nervous. You know, if I'd known what this was, it would have been a lot more. I would have flubbed it. But no, I thought finding out what this game was actually about, and the more I heard in session about the lore and about this, again, this idea of everything being based on sound and the synergy in sound, or the discord in sound, I thought, okay, this is really interesting.
Exactly.
This is such a unique way of telling a story. You know, you could have just said, oh yeah, there's magic, or there's bad magic, right? But this was really, I just thought this was such a novel way.
Very well thought out.
And it made me really curious about, I want to find out more. And I still feel that way. I don't think I know as much as people, like, about the story as people think I might. I only know what I need to know. And so I can't wait to find out more alongside everyone else.
And if you need help, there's my lore videos. No, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much. When we had spoke on Twitter and you said that you had saw my video, I was like, oh shoot, that's pretty cool. Happy to know that it's being of help to people. And just, you know, I guess to speak on the story a little bit from a personal perspective, because I know there's only so much that you can share. We have, I always tell people the story of Wuthering Waves is really just getting started, honestly. The way that I categorize it is everything that we had in 1.x is what I call, you know, 1.0 up to 1.4. It was really just world building and kind of laying the foundations. The actual quote unquote story really feels like it starts in 2.0. I kind of consider everything, and it's all a part of the story, but I consider 1.x the prologue, basically. It's like a prologue to a story, and then 2.0 is where we actually, okay, we have our mission. We have, like, we saw Shorekeeper, you know, Black Shores, all that stuff, and now we're setting off. And what's actually really interesting is because the developers, they put out a trailer that showed like basically 2.0 to 2.4 in terms of,
I saw that trailer.
Yeah, in terms of name, which is interesting, because we did not see anything about 2.4 actually. Visually, they showed nothing. They showed visually, all we saw was up to 2.3. We actually have no idea what 2.4 is going to really show us, which is interesting. But even beyond that, whether if we have a 2.5 or if we jump straight into 3.0, I have no idea personally, and I really don't. But it's just like there's so much building up, but at the same time, like I said, this is just the beginning. Like, games like this really take on a life of their own, to where it's just like, you know, 3, 5, 7. I'm not sure if they told us an exact amount of time. Like sometimes people will say like, oh yeah, this is a 10-year plan or a 7-year plan or whatever. But the point is that you can get really invested. I think for me personally, that's one of the things that I was excited about with Wuthering Waves, because I like a game that I can kind of live in, I guess you could say. Yeah. Because it's a living game. Like, yes, there are games where sometimes you just want to finish the game, right? Sometimes it's just like, all right, just give me my 15-hour experience or my 10-hour experience and cool. But then there's other games where it's just like, I know what happened with me. There's a game called Tales of Arise, and we enjoyed me and my wife. We enjoyed the characters so much in that game that we were just like, man, I don't want this to end. You know, I like eventually it's gonna end, but I just didn't want it to end so soon. And so with Wuthering Waves, this is kind of like an experience where it's just like you get to really exist in this world with these characters for some considerable time. And so, like I said, for me, I really appreciated that about it. I appreciated like you were saying, how the story is, it was like very clearly thought out. And so a lot of people I've seen when we talk about the story, because similar to yourself, I just like good stories. Like that's honestly, like, I can enjoy everything, mind you. Like, I like combat, I like all that stuff, but the thing that really gets me hooked into a game is if the story is good. Like, you can have good combat, I'll still play it, but if there is a story, that's something that I'm going to be paying really close attention to. And so with the game, with Wuthering Waves, I see a lot of people who will say things like, oh, you know, they'll just kind of have their different opinions about the story. And I usually tell people, I was like, it's kind of hard to have a really strong opinion about the story just yet, because it's really it's just getting started. And so for me, like I said, for me personally, I have been enjoying what we've had so far, and I'm just really looking forward to where we're going to be going in the near future, actually, because if you guys are watching this, the anniversary is less than 24 hours away. So
very soon.
So extremely excited for that. And then I know the game's gonna be coming to Steam as well. So there's gonna be a lot of new people who are gonna get the opportunity to try it out. Maybe have not heard of Wuthering Waves before, but you know, they're on the Steam page, they see Wuthering Waves, they say, hey, you know, let me try it out. And so I think you were telling me that you were pretty excited about the Steam release as well, correct?
Yes. So one of the reasons I haven't played the game myself, it's in part because I've not had time, but also I am just a PC gamer. And I know that it is currently possible to play it on PC, but I will be honest, I play a lot of games on Steam. So I'm looking forward to it being available there. It's something I do want to try because I've seen the lore videos, but I would like to experience that story for myself, you know, in the time that it has been written for, you know, slowly, not just condensed. I would like to try and see all of that brilliant stuff that came before. So I think I'll give it a try. I mean, I'm a little challenged for time because I'm in the very lucky position to have work coming up.
Awesome.
So I don't know when I'll get to try it, but I am looking forward to trying it in my own time. I realized I need to start watching what I actually say online, because now people actually notice. You know, someone was talking about like whether someone, you know, if there were any voice actors who were like interested in playing the game, and I just said, yeah. And then, you know, a few people immediately said, okay, so when are you streaming? And I just realized, okay, yeah, people will actually take note of what I say now, so I should be careful.
Mind you don't have to stream.
No,
play the game, like, and I'm just being 100% honest with you, because there are certain voice actors that stream, but at the end of the day, play the game how you want to play it. Because the thing about streaming is 30 hours. A 30-hour gaming session in streaming is like an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. It almost 2x to 3x the time, because you're talking, you're communicating with chat. It's a whole thing. So I would prioritize playing the game first, and then if you feel that
I'm interested in the story, and I mean, I think it's flattering that anyone would even want to care to watch me play. But I mean, I'll keep it in mind. But I think, yes, for me, my main interest is actually just in understanding the story better and experiencing it myself the way it was intended. So I'm really excited to see that it's coming out, and it's also just great that it's, as you say, it's becoming available to maybe a bigger audience, maybe people who hadn't heard of it, or just for some reason haven't tried it, but now that it's more maybe available to them, they'll give it a try.
I've heard some people like that as well, who were saying they were waiting for it to come to Steam.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always great, I think, when something reaches a bigger audience. So it'll be exciting to see how that goes.
People get to hear your amazing performance.
I mean, once they get to the part, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just cool that people get to experience, as you say, that ongoing a continual development of the game. I think I understand that draw, as you say, to a game that isn't just you've played it once and it's completed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that idea of it being continuous, it makes it feel more like a world you are living in, as you say. You feel part of it because it doesn't just end.
You grow with it
keep
in a
going.
way too, to be honest. I
And
know.
more is added as you go, right? You get to new areas, new stories, new characters. You know, there's always something new to discover.
Yep.
So I can totally see the appeal of that.
Yeah, like I said, I think you'll definitely enjoy it. It's honestly like it's a really solid experience, and I really like the way that they kind of consider how it will be. I've noticed with the game, they consider how it's going to be played for people who are playing it for the first time. There was this one moment actually at the end of the first act, I guess, or I'll just say the first patch at 1.0. The end of 1.0 going into 1.1, there were some people who were saying, oh, why did it 1.1 start the way it did? And I was like, you do remember what happened at the end of 1.0, right? And I'm trying to be vague so as not to spoil anything.
Yeah,
but basically, because of when you think about like a narrative and like how it has this like its ebbs and its flows, its ups and its downs, so forth, so on, high moments, low moments, into high moments. They were very intentional about making sure that they connected very well, basically.
Right.
So it feels like even though technically the story is being delivered to you in pieces, it still flows very well for the person who's coming, you know, a month late, 6 months late, a year late, so forth, so on. So yeah, it'll definitely be good for that. So I want to hear your thoughts on your character. As potentially surreal as that might sound, or rather on your characters. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Cartethiya as a character? You know, kind of like her personality and how you try to exhibit. I know you said you only knew so much about her, but as time progressed, I think you said you start to learn a little bit more about her. So yeah, so I guess as a character, what were your thoughts on Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis, actually?
I think, as you say, you have to talk about them, you know, together, right? Because they're there's two sides of the same coin, right? They're two halves of the character. I think what's really lovely about Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis is, I think the reason they resonate so well, unintended, with audiences is because there is something in their story that I think is relatable to a lot of us, even if we've never been locked up in a tower for 20 years. Hopefully that hasn't happened. Cartethiya, that we meet first, is a character that has a lot of doubts about herself. She has some fears. She's finding her confidence. She's figuring out who she is. But in that, there is doubt and there is fear about what will happen and this truth about herself that she doesn't remember. She only has these fragments about her past and she's trying to piece together the truth. And what I really think people respect about her and what I really respect about her is that even though she is afraid of the truth and the potential outcome, and even though she knows that finding the truth could hurt her and upset her, she is determined to get it anyway. She acknowledges her fear and her doubt, but pushes through it. I think that's certainly what I really like about the character. One thing I really love about her is that determination to be truthful, not just to herself, but to everything. And this philosophy she has that you can't just avoid truth by pretending it's not there or staying blissfully ignorant. That doesn't change the truth of something. It just means you are living in pretense and you are not, dealing with the reality of your situation. And she refuses to do that. And I think that's something that's really inspirational. I think something that really strikes a chord with a lot of people, this idea that the truth is the truth and you can't hide from it. And even though it can be really scary and intimidating if we face it bravely, hopefully then we will be in a position where we can, whatever we find out, we can deal with it, we can grow, we can overcome it.
Yes.
And so you have this wonderful example, I think what the younger Cartethiya shows us is, even when you feel that maybe you are weak or in a position where you feel like you can't do as much as you would like, you can still make a difference. Your choice does still matter. As we see in the story, she chooses to fight, even though she doesn't have a lot to fight with, even though she is weak, even though she isn't physically as strong as her opponents. She chooses to fight, and she makes a difference. She does help. It isn't pointless, it isn't worthless. And I think that's something that we could all remember, you know, like, it doesn't matter how we feel, we can affect change. And what's so great, I think, about Fleur-de-Lis, on the other hand, is she is this character who is clearly very strong, very resilient, very powerful, and confident. But I think she's also a really elegant example of, even if you have those qualities, if you are strong and competent and confident and resilient, that doesn't mean that you have to take every burden on. It doesn't mean that the entire responsibility falls on you. It doesn't mean that you have to be the one who sacrifices everything for everyone else. I think it's easy to feel that way, and I think a lot of us can relate to feeling like, I should be the one to take this on. I'm the best equipped to handle this. A lot of us take on responsibilities for other people because we love them. And she does the same. She takes on this responsibility to save everyone, right? But you also see the burden it is on her. And what I think is so lovely is that Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis, they are one, really. They're just different aspects of one person with a similar belief in, you know, doing the right thing, making the sacrifice that is necessary to help others. And they are both willing to, in a way, sacrifice themselves for the other. Cartethiya is willing to sacrifice herself so that Fleur-de-Lis can have the peace she wants. And Fleur-de-Lis is willing to cease to exist so that Cartethiya can live on in blissful ignorance and be happier, free of her. But that's also why it's such a beautiful moment when Cartethiya says, no, that's not what I want. I don't want to forget. I don't want to be free of the painful things, because they make me who I am.
Exactly.
And she wouldn't become Fleur-de-Lis without that pain. She wouldn't get the strength and the confidence and resilience of Fleur-de-Lis without those painful memories. So I think it's just such a beautiful character. And there's so much we can, I think, take inspiration from and guidance from in those two characters. So I feel so lucky to have been part of telling that story and working on that character, because, yeah, I think that's a really powerful story. And I think that's why it's been received well, because people relate to the truth of their story.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, because as I was playing the story, and just to speak from my own perspective, I think one of the things that you mentioned, just like that courage that they both have, one of the things that I really resonated with and appreciated about Cartethiya from the jump, honestly, was just how thoughtful she was. The fact that she was like, you know, yeah, I thought about that. I considered the fact that, what if I am this person that, you know, I could potentially be, right? Maybe I am the bad guy. Maybe I am the Threnodian Resonator. And if that is the case, you know, I'm prepared to face whatever that is. And I think the thing that I kind of gathered from it too was this idea, and I'm going to be talking about this in a video, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But one of the things that Rover actually does, and I really think that people should take into account just what Rover really did in that situation, because Rover noticed all those things you talked about and addressed them. Not to label yourself, essentially. Like, it's like, yeah, you know, you are you, you know, like you are Cartethiya, you know, Threnodian Resonator, Summoner Resonator, regardless of what that is. Fleur-de-Lis, because in essence the name Fleur-de-Lis is really a title given by the order, and Rover is basically just like, you don't have to feel the need to adopt all these titles or these labels rather for yourself. It's like you are enough by yourself. Like you are enough, regardless of those other things. The person that I met, that is who you are. Those the titles and the labels don't define you, essentially. And then even beyond that, we see with Cartethiya, where she basically sees them fighting, and the same thing with Rover, where it's just like she sees Cartethiya, Fleur-de-Lis fighting, and because, like you were saying, that they were confident enough to keep going regardless of what might happen, but because of that valuing of truth, because they placed value in truth, people came to their aid. If they had never done that, right? If they had never done that, Cartethiya might have just, like, the reality is, and spoiler for the end of 2.2 if you haven't played it, so just so you know, skip maybe 20 seconds into the future real quick. The Imperator literally told us that they were basically about to just hit the self-delete button, and we're going to take out themselves, Cartethiya, Fleur-de-Lis, and the Thernodian all in one fell swoop by doing the little plan with Cartethiya originally. That was the goal. So they would have all been gone. So if it had not been for their determination to keep fighting and to, in reality, that selflessness that they were able to display, they probably would not have gotten the help that they eventually got, where Cartethiya was just like, I'm going to be selfless now. I see you being selfless, and that has inspired me to be selfless instead of just taking on this, newfound power and basically becoming the most powerful being in all of Renacita, basically, as far as we know. One of the, I'm now going to say, you know what? I recognize what you're doing, and now I'm gonna help you. And the same thing happened with Rover, where he recognized what Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis were doing and decided, okay, you know what? I'm gonna help you out now, because you've clearly been, you've been holding it down for 20 years. And so let me lift that burden off of you. And so yeah, I think that story was absolutely amazing. Now, one of my questions is, how did you navigate the differences when it came to actually voicing the characters, like between Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis? Like, would you just like flip the switch, or what was going through your mind when you were saying, okay, I'm voicing this one versus I'm voicing this one?
So obviously through a lot of the story, you could say they've got different goals, or they have different things in their mind. So obviously their attitudes, even though they share the same values, that I think what is concerning them or what they're trying to achieve is quite different. So that's, just obviously they have different aims and goals. But I think in terms of just making the voices sound different, I kind of worked backwards, and I thought, well, what would the whole person sound like? What would the complete person sound like? I thought, well, they would sound confident and whole. They would sound healthy. They would sound happy. And I thought, well, so if we have these two pieces, because Cartethiya really is a piece that is broken off from Fleur-de-Lis, say. So I thought that there should be this sense of incompleteness to them a little bit, without making them too, you could make a voice that would be very annoying to listen to for a long time, where it sounds like obviously something's going on here, but I thought I just wanted to make it subtle. And so I think for Cartethiya, obviously I knew she had to be younger and brighter, and Fleur-de-Lis would be older and have a more mature sounding voice. So already, of course, you have kind of opposites going on. But what I was trying to do was to make Cartethiya feel just a little more unsupported, a little breathier, a little lighter, just in terms of vocals, so that we had this sense that she didn't have the weight and strength and power behind her that Fleur-de-Lis has. She has all the convictions, she has all the values, but she is just lighter in a way.
Is it like maybe a little bit more unsure? Like you're gonna fight still, but you're just not, because she doesn't have that power. So maybe
Yeah,
she felt like
exactly.
a tad bit unsure, but still willing to do so.
Yes, a little uncertainty, I suppose, just because again she doesn't have that information yet about herself,
That's true.
and that makes her question things a little more. And she knows what she will do if it's the worst case, but it's too early to make. So I was trying to have that idea of being, I think, a bit more vulnerability, I suppose, in that characterization of her, and just making the voice sound lighter, younger, less assured, certainly about herself. So just making those doubts come through. And with Fleur de Lis, it was more a sense of there is great conviction, there is great strength, but there is also deep exhaustion. She's been carrying this weight for so long. So I wanted it to feel like if Cartethiya has this lightness, this airiness to her, then I thought Fleur de Lis should have this weight to her. This sense that she is weary, that she is burdened, the literal weight of everything she is carrying and fighting against. So just have a feeling of that inner struggle, that constant resistance that she's is giving.
And just for clarity, these are your decisions, correct?
Yes. No, nobody told me, do anything. They just said we would like them to sound younger and brighter.
And that's really impressive. Like, you all take note, because the fact that this isn't just like direction, this was her decision to make those sound, like to make them sound that way, and how good it ended up sounding.
I think this is something everyone can do, just, whether or not you have a character that has a duality in them. It's just, thinking about from the same starting point, what happens if you go in one direction versus what happens if you go in a different direction, and can you play with it a little bit? They have the same accent, they have different ages, they have different intentions, they have different vocal qualities. So there is a lot that is very different about the two voices. But I also wanted it to feel like when they meet in the middle, it's not too unbelievable from either starting point, if that makes sense. Because the voice she has at the end of 2.2, and I feel like everyone caught this, so well done, it's changed again. The voice after, at the end of it, is slightly different. It is more the combination. It's not completely Cartethiya, it's not completely Fleur de Lis. It's in the middle a little bit. So there is more confidence, because it's still mostly Cartethiya.
She's also a little bit spicier too.
Exactly, she's spicier. And I think that made a lot of sense to me, because if we think about what we know of the character from what's told in the game, Cartethiya was fun, She went, she partied, she did some things. She doodled, she stole the wine, she had a good time.
That she did.
and you might see early Cartethiya in the story and think, where did that come from? That doesn't seem like who she is right now. And I thought, well, surely when she comes back to that, we still see a bit of that mischief or that playfulness that is in her, the willfulness, the stubbornness, right?
Yeah.
Was determination and resilience and resistance.
The fact she told Rover, like, I need to get stronger than you. When she said that, I was like, whoa, do you know who you're talking to? Like, hey, look, all respect to you, but this is the OG right here. Like, those are big words. But then when she explained her reasoning, I was like, respect.
And I think that's what's also so lovely about her as a character, is that she's just overcome this massive thing, this massive challenge, right? That she's been working towards for
potentially life-altering, shattering.
She gives it 5 minutes and then she's got a new goal, and it's a lofty one. But I think it just shows again that determination, that drive in her. I'm going to do the right thing that is going to help people. And what's the new thing she can do that will help people? Well, it's to be that person if Rover ever needs that.
Yeah, exactly.
Be strong so that she can defend people.
Yes.
And I just think it's hard not to like that about a character, someone who is just driven to always be better, to grow, to learn more, to be strong. I think that's lovely about her. And it's nice that she got to have a moment where she's a little sassier, depending on what dialogue options you pick.
That is true. I guess I have like self report. I guess I have 2 accounts, And
Oh, okay.
so I usually pick alternating voice lines. You can also
Yeah.
go to the in-game, I think it's called the gallery. Yeah, gallery. Because they also recently revealed that there's a glossary now that's going to be implemented in 2.3 for terms. So like when you're playing through
Right.
the
Yeah.
game, certain dialogue terms that might seem unfamiliar, you can click on that and then it'll show you what those terms mean. But then there's a gallery where you can go and re-listen to voice lines, and you can choose the different dialogues. So like if they gave you 3, you can only pick 1. You can now listen to all 3.
Oh, that's fun. Because I would be someone playing this game who would agonize over, like, even if it doesn't make a difference, I would agonize over the choice, like, should we give her the salad? Should we give her a pizza?
Yeah. Now, fortunately, that choice, they actually let you do all 3 in the game.
Oh, okay. That's good.
That was
That's
one
good.
of the rare ones where you could actually just get all the items. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have to ask you this question. Okay.
Yeah.
And you may or may not get in trouble for answering it, but do it for the fans.
Okay.
Pineapple pizza. Do you like it or not? Pineapple on
Controversial,
pizza.
I would eat it. I would eat it. Me, I would. I know. Look, I respect that in Raguna, this would not fly. This would be a very big faux pas. And I completely think it's not even in doubt that Cartethiya would not. I would, but I would say not if it's Italian pizza. If it's, proper Italian pizza, I would not put pineapple on it. If it was my own homemade creation, I'd probably be a bit more lax, but I wouldn't mess with Italian pizza. I respect it too much. It's too good, it doesn't need it.
Respect. I have eaten pineapple on pizza.
Yeah.
And it was delicious.
I mean, look,
Hawaiian pizza, just try it. Like, look up Hawaiian pizza. They put pineapple on it. Specifically, if you get, they put chicken and pineapple on pizza, and you can do like barbecue chicken. It's so like I had it when I was a kid, and I don't know, teenager, whatever. And I didn't know that this was a faux pas. So I tried it. I was like, this is great. And I don't eat it all the time, but it's definitely like something that I would be willing to eat if there was a place, because not that many places serve it. Some people would say rightfully so. But yeah.
Look, I think the brilliant thing about food, it's like with games, right? Just have whatever you enjoy. And I think if you are making your own food, why not experiment? Why not be creative? Like, I'm sure whoever invented Hawaiian pizza, I've heard it's Canadian, so I don't know if that's true, but whoever invented it, I don't know if that was just someone thinking, do you know what? We've got this pineapple, we've got to, let's see what happens. Or if they just really like pineapple, but why not? If it's something a lot of people enjoy, why not try it? I think as long as you don't, again, as long as you just keep your preference, and you don't get mad at other people for not enjoying it, then there's really no harm done, right?
Yeah, like I think, when it comes to food, options are great. Unless you're putting raisins in guacamole, then I have no respect for you at all.
Okay, that's a new one for me as well. I don't know how I feel about that, but again, if you love that, it's valid.
No, sorry, go straight to jail. Straight to jail. My sister told me one time that she did that, and I was like,
seems odd. I don't know if that's a misconception, like maybe someone saw beans and they thought, but could it be raisins?
Raisins and guacamole. I legitimately was questioning, like, I was like, are you sure we're related? Like, oh man. But
no choice.
No, it's okay. I love her, but my goodness, I bring it up. Like whenever she tells me, oh, try this, it's really good. I'm like, I don't know. You put raisins in your guacamole. I don't know how much I can trust your palate. Nah, but okay, then that was a very important question.
I know. I hope I will have sparked a controversy now or something. But
all manner of wars. All manner of wars. Now, to be fair, Zani actually is the one in the story who told us about Pizza Tropical. So
it's true.
I'm just saying.
I've seen that we also have some spicy preferred dishes for Chicana. Like, she has her own little invention, a dish she likes to make. I mean, I think those two, they're just rogue.
Legitimately. Hey, look, don't tell anybody I said this, but I would not be surprised You don't like if they broke some pasta behind closed doors. They might
We
have
can't
even
rule it
broke
out.
ramen. You
Yeah.
know, it's interesting. There's actually that thing where it's like in Italy, don't break pasta, and then in Japan, you're supposed to like whenever you eat ramen, you're supposed to just like soup or whatever it's called, like the whole
slurp it
thing,
all up.
slurp the whole
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, slurp. There we go. You're supposed to slurp the entire thing. You're not supposed to bite. I don't know where that came from for both cultures, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like I can. Well, either way, I guess you don't break it. That's the whole point, right? Like you respect the craft that went into making it. I don't know if that's where it's
Yeah,
come from. But,
I'm just
it's
wondering
about
where it
follow
came
the
from.
local rules. Just be respectful. I guess.
Yeah,
If in doubt.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think at this juncture, is there anything else that you would like to say to uh the fans of Cartethiya, Wuthering Waves, even yourself? Maybe I was surprised to find out that you've been on like in shows you were saying as well, like your face forward on the screen.
Well,
So
I mean, a little bit of everything. I think it doesn't hurt to try different things, and I enjoy different styles of acting. I really love voice acting, so I'm very, very happy that I'm doing that right now. But I guess if I was going to say anything, I'll just say thank you, everyone, for being so lovely, for being so welcoming. It feels daunting to work on a big project like this, to come into a community, an existing story that everyone loves and has strong opinions about. And I just want to say thank you, because I feel like everyone's been so kind, so welcoming, so supportive, so kind and generous in your praise. You never know if something you do will be well received, but I'm very grateful that you seem to have received it well, and that you seem to have enjoyed Cartethiya and Fleur-de-Lis's story. So thank you for making me feel welcome. Thank you for enjoying the content. And I mean, I hope we can all continue to enjoy Wuthering Waves together. I'm very excited to get to try it myself. I've no doubt that there'll be lots of people out there who are happy to offer guidance if I, end up going, what are asteroids again? So, thank you so much. You're really lovely. And all the fan art and the music and all the content creators, like, you're all amazing. There's so much joy in that work that you are all doing. I'm doing my bit, like when I see beautiful fan art or some music that someone's made, I try to share it, because I just think, how lovely is it that this story is inspiring everyone to do this beautiful work that we can all enjoy. So
absolutely.
Yes, I just want to thank you for being lovely, all of you.
Thank you all so much for coming through. Hopefully I will see you all again on the channel as we continue to break down the lore, break down the story, and figure out what life lessons we can learn throughout the process. Until next time, I will catch you all. Peace. Hey, you. Do the thing.